limit source countries to impose tax on the business profits. This situation has created serious base erosion problems that took the attention of the developed and developing countries since tax has long been regarded as the main domestic financial sources to provide public goods and services for the nation. This was the start of the base erosion and profit system project. Ladies and gentlemen, as I was saying, when digitalization created serious problems for countries around the world, the group of 20, including Indonesia, as one of its members, has realized that this issue ought to be dealt with immediately. In November 2012, G20 gave the OECD a mandate to work on the BEPS project, and at the G20 St. Petersburg Leaders Summit in September 2013, G20 leaders officially endorsed the BEPS project with tax challenges arising from digitalization being BEPS Action 1. The OECD has been mandated to develop a global consensus-based solution on taxing the income from digitalized business activities, taking into account fairness in distribution of taxing right as well as feasibility and simplicity of its implementation. In 2015, the OECD issued final report of the BEPS Action 1 in which we could find significant progress of the development of the consensus, but one single approach was yet to be developed. The OECD then in November 2019 proposed the so-called unified approach to taxing digital transaction under Pillar 1, where the distribution of taxing right came up, and Pillar 2, where the anti-BEPS measures are developed. In Pillar 1, the key feature of a possible solution has been discussed. Those are the scope and carve out of the business that will be covered in this approach. Creation of the new nexus that will not be depend on physical presence, but largely based on sales, creation of the new profit allocation rule applicable to taxpayer in the scope and irrespective of whether taxpayer has an in-country marketing or distribution present, creation of formulaic approaches as a complement to the arm's length principle and tax certainty. A 3-tier mechanism under Pillar 1 has also been developed in determining profit allocated to market jurisdiction. Amount A, which will be share of a normal profit allocated to market jurisdiction using formulaic approach. Amount B, which will be a fixed remuneration for marketing and distribution function taking place in the market jurisdiction. And then amount C, which will be an additional return where its country function exceed the baseline activity compensated under amount B, but subject to legally binding and effective dispute prevention and resolution mechanism. Anti-BEPS measures have also been developed under Pillar 2, where we will for rule to prevent tax avoidance in the implementation of Pillar 1. The income inclusion rule, which will tax the income of a foreign branch or control entity should that income be subject to tax at an effective rate below the minimum rate. Switch over rule, which will deny an income deduction or impose a source-based taxation on a payment that is not subject to tax at or above the minimum rate, the undertax payment rule, which will allow resident jurisdiction to switch from exemption method to credit method in the case profit attributable to a PE or derived from immovable property not being part of a permanent establishment are subject to an effective rate below the minimum rate and the subject to tax rule, which will complement the undertax payment rule by subjecting a payment to tax at source and adjusting eligibility for the treaty benefit on the certain item of income in the case the payment is not subject to tax at a minimum rate. The development of the two pillar has entered into critical phase as several countries have started to develop a unilateral measure which may not preferable since may harm cross-border transaction, and the global consensus is expected to be reached by the mid 2021 this year. Ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia has long been recognized as a voice of developing economy during the development of BEPS project since 2012 in the inclusive framework on BEPS meeting, including those the task force on digital economy that discuss tax challenges arising from digitalization. We have relied developing economists' voice the importance of taxing right distribution being fair and considering both market and resident jurisdiction on a level playing field, which will be a great importance in reaching the consensus. We have also encouraged the OECD to develop comprehensive yet feasible and simple mechanism for the implementation of the solution so the both taxpayer compliance costs and tax authorities administrative costs remain efficient. Indonesia also continues to take a leading role during our participation in regional cooperation fora such as the Study Group on Asia Pacific Tax Administration and Research, or SGATA, of which Directorate General of Taxes is currently the chair. The Belt and Road Initiative Tax Cooperation Mechanism, or BRITACOM, and the Asian Forum on Taxation in emphasizing the significance of BEPS project to the fellow members. Hopefully, our effort can put the inclusiveness of the BEPS project into realization, and the solution of digitalization in particular can be implemented in wider scope. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of my speech, I would like to extend my appreciation to all speakers and moderator who join us to share their knowledge, and to Ubaya and the organizing committee for doing their best in preparing this webinar. I hope this webinar can discuss deeper on topics that I have mentioned about during my keynote speech so as to keep the participation to stay updated as regard the issue at our hands. I'm looking forward to productive discussion, and I hope we all can bring back useful insight from this international webinar to our respective works. Thank you. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Professor Dr. John Hutagal, for the very informative session. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, now we will proceed to the first session that will be delivered by Mr. Andrew Auerbach, a Senior Tax Advisor, Center for Tax Policy and Administration, OECD. This session will be moderated by Dr. Basin Gaspar, an editor-in-chief of GPT Journal of Polytechnic Ubaya. Please welcome Mr. Andrew Auerbach and Dr. Basin Gaspar for the moderator. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Devi. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Session 1 in our seminar today is the presentation by Mr. Andrew Auerbach. He is the right person to talk about this topic, seen from his present position. First, he is the Senior Tax Advisor for the Center for Tax Policy and Administration in Indonesia. In addition, he is also the member of the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, whose one of the job is to design the policy and the guidelines for digital tax collection. So now I would like to request Mr. Andrew Auerbach to present his topic. Now, you, the audience, while listening to Mr. Andrew Auerbach talking, the question and answer will be at the end of this session, but you can write down your questions coming up, questions that you are going to ask in the chat room. Okay, Mr. Andrew Auerbach, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pak Gaspar Bazen. Thank you to the Ubaya Tax Center and DGP for organizing this event and inviting me today. To the other speakers as well, Professor Hudagal, my good friend, and also Pak Aldo, who I know very well. And I have not met Pak Christiagi, but I'm very pleased to be sharing the floor with him today. All of you, I see that there are almost 400 participants, which is quite impressive. I have some slides, and I will try and share those now. If I can find them. Apologies for the delay. Okay. Yes, here we go. All right. I think to begin with, I'd like to echo probably a lot of what Pak Hudagal has already mentioned, and there he spoke very broadly about the tax challenges arising from the digitalization of the economy, and I think it's important maybe to dwell just a very little bit on that term. First, I think we spend a lot of time choosing words, and here we've chosen a lot of words to express this concept. And we see when people talk about tax and digitalization, we see digital tax, electronic transactions tax, internet tax, Google tax, a lot of different ways to explain these things. But one of the things that the OECD has identified in its work in this area is that it's not a case of a particular digital economy. we hear that expression a lot, taxing the digital economy. There's really just one economy, and it's becoming digitalized. And so not just things that we think of as digital, like Google search engines, but in fact, pretty much everything is taking on a digital aspect. And so I just wanted to explain a little bit to put in context the discussion today. This diagram, if we start with this traditional company here in a home jurisdiction, a major economy, they have a business that interacts with this market down here. And our existing international tax rules for taxing international business tax, really says very clearly that the only way that the market is going to get tax out of this business is if there's a permanent establishment or a subsidiary in that jurisdiction. And if so, then typically a tax treaty will govern the allocation of profits to that permanent establishment or the subsidiary. And only in those cases will there be tax there. Now, that's fine, I guess. One of the problems, though, particularly in a modern world, is the ability of multinational enterprises to basically eat away at the profits in that market jurisdiction, typically through the deduction of things like royalties or interest from the profit in the market jurisdiction. And those profits, those royalties and interest, they end up in maybe a tax haven company in a financial center, or there are other ways to achieve that. And we call this base erosion and profit shifting. You're shifting the profits from where they're earned to some place where there's no or little tax, and they don't typically end up back at this traditional company. And so these rules have been in place for a very long time, about 100 years, and they've governed international tax for that time. And there are problems associated with that. I mean, if you study tax, if you study international tax, as many of you, I understand, do, you'll know about transfer pricing. You'll know about thin capitalization, the taking profits out of companies with excessive interest payments. And these kinds of things are what the OECD, along with G20 countries, including Indonesia, have been working against with the base erosion and profit shifting project. This is an OECD G20 exercise to try and make sure that these rules that govern the allocation of taxing rights and the allocation of profits to these market jurisdictions operate well. So that's one thing. And in the context of that, we have a question about digital. What does digital impact? Because not only do we have traditional companies, now we have all sorts of other things, platform operators, search engines, social media, and the things that create subsidiaries or permanent, the reason why you would have a subsidiary, or the physical factors that create a permanent establishment, they don't really apply in the case of modern business models. And so the traditional rules that apply to the traditional business models start to not look so effective. Moreover, these things that create royalties and interest payments in a digital world become much more easy to exploit. For example, intellectual property has become much more important. Patents, algorithms, branding has become a more important part of the business model. In some cases, the entire business model. On top, so we have a problem not only with the operation of the rules as they stand, trying to make them work the way they were intended, but for some things, they don't really work at all because they're trying to be applied to things that the rule never anticipated. And so we need a change to the both the nexus, what creates a right for the market jurisdiction to tax, and we need a change to how the profits would be allocated to those entities, for example, to the search engine or to the platform. But that's not all in terms of the tax challenges arising from the digitalization of the economy. Because you have, for example, VAT. These questions are about direct tax, corporate income tax. But VAT, what happens when you have a foreign company, the platform, arranging sales of services or goods to the market, where the market imposes a VAT, as Indonesia does? Who collects that tax? How is it complied with? How do you enforce it? And so the VAT question becomes very important, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on here, particularly because VAT is a very important part of many countries' tax base. Corporate tax, by comparison, is usually rather small. In some countries it's big, but in a lot of countries, the corporate tax base is smaller than the VAT tax base. Sharing economy. People used to earn money because they went to work and they got paid a salary. But now they're making money because they're sharing, they have an extra asset, or they're gig workers. They do an Uber delivery job, transportation, other kinds of personal services. They're not getting a salary that's subject to a kind of regular payroll tax type of contribution. And that's changing the way that tax administrations and tax policymakers need to think about how they manage the government's resources. So all of these things are challenges that arise from the digital. Oh, and finally, of course, as Pak John mentioned, crypto assets. What do we do with them? What's their impact, and what is their opportunity that provide tax policymakers and administrators to better enforce their tax? So I want to give you the time that I have, and I'm looking at my watch. I think I have 15 minutes, but I'll trust Gaspar to give me a shout if I'm going over time. Just a little bit on these things. On the pillar 1 and 2 that Pak John already mentioned about the new rules and the VAT sharing in gig economy, and virtual currencies. And finally, there will be a pop quiz, so I hope you all pay close attention. Pillar 1 and 2, and this is what dominates, I think, the media and the thinking around tax, and this is why I wanted to illuminate the tax challenges of digitalization or beyond this, but these are obviously the important part. It's about redesigning the international tax rules. And we've been working on these blueprints that we've put into the public. We've published these last October. And this has been a significant effort. 70 days of meetings by our OECD working parties, steering group meetings. These are committees that deal with tax treaties, transfer pricing, aggressive tax planning. It's revenue statistics and policy. This is an intensive process. We had 1,300 pages of comments already received on an initial comment period, and we've shared with countries tools to assess the impact. We had a meeting last October. More than 650 delegates from 130 jurisdictions met virtually on the 8th and 9th of October. The OECD is only 37 member countries, but our inclusive framework on BEPS, on base erosion and profit shifting, organized by the OECD and G20 countries, includes 137 members around the world. And so it's much broader than the OECD. It's all relevant governments around the table. And they agreed to release publicly a statement about the blueprints, about what they mean. Pillar 1, which is about a reallocation of taxing rights and allocation of profits for market jurisdictions. A report on Pillar 2, which is about a kind of baseline minimum corporate tax, and a public consultation document. Now, I want to just show you, these are some of the headlines from when we released this package back in October, and they show you the significance, I think, of this. It was a lot of very controversial. The idea was we were going to release a full answer agreed by all governments by the end of 2020, but that didn't happen. And instead, we released blueprints that try and get a long way to a solution for these problems. There's a lot of fear that if we do not come to an agreement, you see here, collapse of global tax talks could cost $100 billion, OECD says. There is the threat and the likelihood of, in fact, the reality of unilateral measures and trade tensions if an agreement's not reached. The pillars documents are released for public consultation, and that consultation is taking place on the 14th and 15th of January. This is a link. If you have the slides, and I hope the slides will be shared. But if not, just go to our website and look for the public consultation. You can watch that on Thursday, 14th and 15th, Thursday and Friday, I guess. That's open to the public, and you're welcome to attend. There's also an impact assessment. What is the impact going to be? And full details of how this was agreed. What have we agreed? Well, we've agreed. Nothing's agreed till everything's agreed. And what we need is a political commitment. This has been complicated by the COVID situation. It's been complicated by a change of U.S. administration, which plays an important role in whether or not we can get an agreement across the board. But we've done a lot of the work. And if the politicians can get together and say, yes, go ahead, then we can move very quickly because we've done a lot of the hard work. But there are questions that remain to be seen. So what are we proposing? On Pillar 1, very clearly a new taxing right. And I want to just dwell on that for 1 second. A new taxing right, meaning that something that governments would not have had the right under international agreements to tax before, because there was not the appropriate nexus, there wasn't the right connection between a foreign company and your market, would now be able to be taxed by that market jurisdiction without reference to physical presence. It would be net basis taxation, that is profit tax, with mechanisms to avoid double taxation. And this is key, of course, for international business, that double tax is avoided. And this is one of their big fears with unilateral measures where it's a small percentage in many cases, 1%, 2%, or 3% of revenue, but that adds up very quickly, and there could be double tax along the line, very easily mean that they're being taxed at a much, much higher rates than a normal corporate income tax rate. Improve certainty, removal of unilateral measures, that would be part of the agreement. And we would try and achieve something simple. There are open issues to address on scope, on quantum, on what rate of profits is being brought into the exercise, and further technical work, particularly on how it would be administered. That's obviously a challenge. I want to look just very briefly at Pillar 2. Pak John already mentioned it, but essentially this is the other side. I mean, Pillar 1 is about changing the rules to make sure that they're appropriate for the 21st century and modern business. Pillar 2 is about ensuring a base level of corporate income tax. And I think, generally speaking, most advanced economies look at their own multinational enterprises and they say, we want those multinational enterprises to get big. We want them to be global, and we want them to compete in foreign marketplaces. And the problem that they have is that they go into the foreign marketplace, and if they continue to be subject to their home country tax rules, they may very well be at a disadvantage vis-a-vis local companies in that market jurisdiction, or vis-a-vis other multinational companies from other countries that are competing in that market that have a lower home corporate tax rate. And so there's been a kind of race to the bottom in terms of controlled foreign corporation rules, or the taxation of foreign profits of multinational enterprises, on the idea that in the market they would be subject to the local rate. Now, the idea here with, of course, base erosion, that rate has turned out to be zero. And what this seeks to do is to say, look, we're happy for people to compete, but we want a minimum level of tax on those profits if that local jurisdiction is not going to tax them. And if the group is not otherwise taxed, we want to make sure that there's a minimum level of tax. And so the way it would work, just very briefly, is that this operating company, has a deductible payment of royalties. And the first question is it, if there's a tax treaty here that applies that reduces the tax on this royalty payment, normally you would reduce the tax under a treaty on the theory that the payment is subject to tax in this jurisdiction that's receiving the payment. If it's not subject to tax, then it would remove this exemption from tax. So the first rule that operates is a subject to tax rule, in which case if it's not subject to tax, this jurisdiction would then tax it. End of story. If that doesn't apply, then you go to the question of whether or not the parent jurisdiction has taxed that. And if the profit is not otherwise taxed at a minimum rate, then the parent jurisdiction can tax it. But the rules and the agreement here is not that the parent jurisdiction, that all jurisdictions would have to have a minimum level of tax. We're not requiring every jurisdiction to bring in a tax. And if the parent jurisdiction does not, then the market jurisdiction would be able to disallow the deduction of the royalty payment. So not just remove a withholding tax that might otherwise apply, but in this case, disallow the deduction so that those profits would be taxed right in this operating company. So the first question is there a reduction in the rate? And if not subject to tax here, then that doesn't apply. In the circumstances where that doesn't apply, first the parent corporation gets to tax if they tax, and if not, then the market jurisdiction. So that's pillar 2, and combined with pillar 1 is hopefully a complete answer to the modern international tax challenges, direct tax challenges. I'm quickly running out of time. Just very quickly on the economic, what would this cost? And I think one thing that this would, one of the things we've estimated is that if we bring these in, then you could look at $100 billion, up to $100 billion more in corporate tax revenue. More importantly, if you don't bring them in and you get trade disputes arising out of unilateral measures, then it could have a very serious impact on trade and investment. And we think that the COVID-19 crisis is likely to accelerate digitalization and therefore the scale of these problems. So that's direct tax. And I just want to quickly go through VAT, where we're struggling and we're hopeful of getting a consensus on direct tax. And that's something that we're trying to work at in 2021. On VAT, we do have a consensus. In 2015, the countries of the inclusive framework have agreed that the destination principle applies. And so there's a standard internationally about what countries get to collect tax on international trade in services and intangibles. And this has been, so it's the market jurisdiction where the consumer should collect that tax. Indonesia has now brought in rules that give effect to that destination principle, and have already reported significant revenue collected as a result. We at the OECD have been working on developing mechanisms for effective collection of that, how to bring digital platforms into helping with that. And so this is, I think, a real success story. And we've seen around the world a lot of countries bringing in significant revenue, and in virtually all cases, far exceeding their revenue expectations. And so on VAT, which again, I want to stress, it's a very important tax for a lot of countries, has been a real success story. And we're continuing to work on that, particularly in respect of developing countries. The sharing and gig economy is something, this is new. The ways we work are new. We are seeing changes constantly in the nature of labor, in how income is earned, how it's paid. And in this case, we have internet service providers, platforms, facilitating, for example, the rental of a movable property or the delivery of personal services. And it's very difficult for tax administrations to police and enforce compliance on these types of income, to find out how much rental income people are getting, what they're receiving for the personal services. And so we've developed model rules that would allow the country where the platform is situated to collect information and share it with administrations around the world where that platform has customers. And so this is, really in many ways very emblematic of a new world in tax administration that relies on digitalization, relies on cooperation, particularly internationally. I think extensive benefits for the parties involved, even the businesses, simplicity, taxpayers can have pre-filled forms. It can reduce the shadow economy, and that's something that I think for a lot of countries, Indonesia is one where reducing the shadow economy is a big challenge. And just, I think finally, because I see that I'm running out of time, I think on virtual currencies, this is a new area. We are seeing new developments in technology all the time that are impacting tax policy rules, that are impacting tax administration capabilities and challenges and opportunities. The market cap of virtual currencies right now is $350 billion US, and that will only grow. This was, that figure is a little bit old. I saw that Bitcoin has gotten to, I think, $40,000 a Bitcoin, so that number is probably quite a bit higher now. We've made a report, the OECD made a report to the G20 to provide a comprehensive analysis on the treatment of virtual currencies, how it's treated in different jurisdictions, and what the policy implications are. What we found is, governments need to be prepared to provide guidance. They need to improve compliance, and they need to provide a coherent treatment of new types of currencies, assets, and develop appropriate guidance on emerging technological developments, because these things are changing all the time. And so that's where I wanted to end. And I think if there was one thing I wanted to impress upon everybody, is that when we talk about digital tax, it's many, many things. It's both a direct tax challenge, but also there are indirect tax challenges, there are administration issues, international cooperation. Very much the way tax works has changed really immeasurably from the time I joined the OECD in 2007 to before that, when I was studying tax in school in 1998 or whatever it was, back in Canada. And I think for all of you who are studying tax right now and maybe looking ahead at a career at DGP or Ministry of Finance, I think it's a really fantastic area that's constantly changing. I do have a quiz. I don't know, Gaspar, how you want to handle that, but maybe I hand it right back to you for the moment, unless you'd like me to do the quiz.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Auerbach, for your interesting presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems that it's not easy enough to collect the tax, especially from the digital transaction. A lot of challenges, but again, at the same time, opportunities, as highlighted by Mr. Auerbach here. And I hope that this is also one thing that we would like to see in our further discussion. Now we are coming to the question and answer. Now, to do this, you can ask questions directly to Mr. Andrew Auerbach, or maybe you can type your question in the chat room, and I'm going to read it for Mr. Andrew Auerbach. Now, if you want to type it in the chat, please do. Or if you want to ask a direct question, please do. The first round, I would like to have two questions, maybe coming from the floor. You mention your name, right? And then what institution you're from, and then you can refer your question directly to Mr. Auerbach. Make it short and clear. Okay, I noticed that there is no question in the chat yet. Maybe some participants are typing. Anyone who is going to make the direct question, since we have time. Time is always limited.
Gaspar, can you please look at the raise hand column at the participants? There is a participant raise hand. I think she is going to ask some questions. Thank
you. Please do. Introduce yourself, your institution, and your question.
Hello, may I ask the question?
Please go ahead.
From Paris. Hello. Okay. May I ask the question?
Sure, please go ahead.
Okay. I'm Cecilia Rusdi Harini. I'm now in Paris, residence in Paris. I have the question for Mr. Andrew. Thank you so much for your presentation, Mr. Andrew. I know that the OECD base is also in Paris, yeah. My question is, during this pandemic, all the government will suffer from the the crisis in declining the tax revenue. Do you have any idea how to improve the tax revenue for the government? I know in France, for example, they have the residential taxes, the residential tax that we don't have in Indonesia. Do you think it is applicable for Indonesia, or is there any ways how to increase the tax revenue during the pandemic? Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for your question.
Mr. Alba, could you respond to the question?
Yes, merci beaucoup. I haven't been to Paris in a long time, so I hope to get back. It's a very, very good question, and I think a lot of governments are struggling with of course, there's been a huge economic, and so governments around the world rely on corporate tax revenue, personal income tax, and with those things falling, there has been a huge strain on government revenue, and so there's been pressure both to raise revenue, but also to make sure that businesses can continue to survive and hopefully to thrive, and so that a recovery, which we hope is soon, will be promoted, and that we won't be so raising more revenue from businesses can be hard on the economy, and so there you want to, I think, look at things where you can raise revenue the easiest without increasing the burden on businesses unduly. Certainly tax issues of tax avoidance are going to be things that you want to look at very closely to try and bring as much of that revenue into the government as possible, and as well promoting business as much as you can to keep the economy going. And I think these are things that Indonesia has done very well. There's been a very aggressive response from the Ministry of Finance on supporting businesses, and I think that that's already paid dividends. In the long term or in the medium term, I think it does give the government an opportunity to think, as you suggest, about different sources of revenue. For example, property taxes or carbon taxes, fuel taxes. Fuel prices are very low right now, and maybe introducing gasoline taxes now, which would have a small impact as the price rise, be a little bit more palatable. So I think there are different things that governments want to look at in the medium term, but the important thing is to make sure that the economy continues, that businesses remain viable, and then in the medium to longer term, think about different solutions. I think the property tax idea is something that's a very good one. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the answer, Mr. Andrew. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Ibu Cecilia in Paris, and I hope that the speaker mention your name and institution, and then
I'm working in the embassy.
Go ahead.
I'm working in the embassy, Indonesian embassy in Paris, but this is personal, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Cecilia. The next question, please. We are looking for forward to more questions coming to the floor, since Mr. Andrew Albrecht is still with us. This is a very rare opportunity.
Gaspar, I think there are 2 questions in the chat.
Oh, okay, let me check. Okay, I will read the questions. From from your point of view, what is the most important key of success, especially for the GDT, in order to secure economic shares as the digital economy keeps advancing without hurting the business around the COVID-19?
These are very tough questions.
Right. Did you get the point? It's not so clear.
Well, maybe if I could try.
It is already in the chat.
Maybe if I could try on this question about economic shares in the digital economy. I mean, this is the essential question that's facing governments around the world. I mean, we see that the economy is becoming more and more digital, And we know that the rules are old, and so we know that the rules need to change. And the question is, how are they going to change? And the risk that that Indonesia, as well as other countries, face is that there is no global consensus, and where there is no global consensus, we get individual action, and I think the risk there is that Indonesia's tax sovereignty, the ability of Indonesia to protect its own tax, becomes compromised. Because Indonesia can impose its own tax, but all the other countries are imposing their tax. And business has a very difficult time then navigating that scenario, and it has a downward pressure on international investment and the flow of trade generally. And Indonesia as a country that is both an importer of foreign investment, a huge exporter, a huge marketplace in Indonesia, really is working both sides of that street and wants to protect, I think, the flow of capital overall as much as possible. And so a global consensus is very good for Indonesia. Obviously, it has to make sense. As Pak John mentioned earlier, you need rules that people can apply. You need a deal that makes sense for people. But we know that the digital economy is going to keep advancing, and the more it advances, the more pressing this question becomes. So, if there is no agreement on this Pillar 1, Pillar 2 question, that doesn't mean that question is going to go away. We're just going to have individual action, and then we'll have trade disputes, and then we'll have people back at the table, and we'll have an agreement years from now. But we will have lost that time. And so, I think that for Indonesia, and I mean for the world generally, a global consensus is worthwhile. It's a tough thing to do, though. I mean, essentially, you're changing the rules while we're playing the game, and that's going to be hard always. But we hope. So, thanks for the question.
I hope that Mr. Agnan is from the Department of Finance, Republic of Indonesia.
Okay.
Now, since there are no more questions, we are moving to pop quiz. We provided questions in the chat room, so the participants could go to the chat and do the quiz. The time is limited. It's only 2 minutes. Okay, thank you. Finally, we would like to give a long applause for Mr. Andrew Auerbach for his nice presentation today. We would like to thank you, Mr. Auerbach, for your nice presentation. Let's give a long applause. Then I'll see you later.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, Ms. Devi, the moderators, the first session is already done.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round virtual applause to Mr. Andrew for his very interesting and informative speech. Documentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you to turn on your video. The committee, Rio, will do the screen capture. Rio, silakan.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Devi. Selamat siang Bapak Ibu sekalian. Sebelum lanjut ke
Rio, silakan.
Sebelum lanjut ke sesi 2, kita ada sesi foto atau sesi dokumentasi. Jadi bagi Bapak Ibu yang belum menyalakan kameranya bisa dinyalakan terlebih dahulu. Baik, saya akan mulai dari slide yang pertama. 1, 2, slide kedua, slide keempat, 1, 2, 3. Slide kelima, 1, 2. Slide keenam, slide ke-7, slide ke-8, slide ke-9, slide ke-12, slide ke-13, dan yang terakhir slide ke-14. Oke, baik. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu atas kerjasamanya. Untuk acara selanjutnya, saya kembalikan ke MC Bu Devi. Bu, silakan.
For the second session, I would like to welcome Bapak Arnaldo Purba, the section head, Exchange of Information 1, Directorate of International Taxation, DGP Indonesia. This session will be moderated by Bapak Wan Juli SA, MS and Law, IKPI. Bapak Wan Juli, time is yours. Time
Thank
is
you, Bu
yours.
Devi. I have your attention, please. Before I begin, I would like to greet our honorable speaker, Professor Dr. John Huta Setiaji, and our distinguished moderator, Pak Gaspar, and my friend, Pak Purnomo Lastu. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to this presentation. I to welcome. In this occasion, we would like to have a presentation from Pak Anodo Economy, Challenges, Options, and Issues. Pak Anodo Purba is the section head, Exchange of Information 1, Directorate of International Taxation, Directorate General of Taxes. All right, Pak Arnoldo Purba, the floor is yours. Let me join. Can you please join me to give an applause to Pak Arnoldo Purba? Pak Arnoldo Purba. Pak Arnoldo, the time is yours. Thank you. Time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Wan Juli and Bu Devi, for your kind introduction. And Tech Center Universitas Surabaya for giving such invaluable opportunity to speak in this webinar. Pak Wan Juli, you can hear my voice?
Yes, thank you, Pak. It's very
Okay.
clear. I will assist you to share screen, Pak. So please don't worry.
It's okay, Pak.
Just say
We
next
can
and I will
control it
continue.
from here.
Oh yeah. Thank you. So then I will stop sharing.
Sure.
Thank you. I will stop sharing.
Yeah. Pak John, Mr.
Okay.
Andrew Orbah, Pak Bawono Pristiaji, and all participants. As an introduction, I would like to mention that the presentation that I will be giving is limited to actually. There are two main. First, comes to cross-border indirect taxes like tax or VAT or PPN in Indonesia, or goods and services tax in some other jurisdictions, have less issues compared to direct taxes such as income tax. For example, Indonesia has implemented VAT on digital services delivered by foreign businesses to Indonesian consumers since July last year, right? And we did not see any significant resistance from either business sectors or other countries' tax administrations. Second reason is that, as we all know, while Indonesia has enacted law number 2, year 2020, which is the primary law for taxing electronic transactions in Indonesia, we do not have the implementing regulations in effect with regard to income tax and electronic transaction tax. Therefore, my today focuses on direct taxing the digitalization of the economy by highlighting three things. What are the challenges posed by the digitalization of the economy? Second, what options do we have to address such challenges? And last but not least, what are some issues that each option has? Next slide, please. Yeah. So we have seen fundamental shifts in all aspects of international businesses, particularly in the past 2 decades, from how they invest, to how they make money, to how they distribute profits and deploy capital, thanks to the digitalization. Through digitalization, the digital economy has benefited most nations, as it has boosted international trade. The digital economy is not only creating new opportunities for global growth and prosperity, it's also revolutionizing the way they do business today. Those companies continually change their tax strategies, but unfortunately, tax regulations seem to not catch up with the changes in the business sector. On the one hand, we have tax treaties that generally reflect traditional concepts of source tax. Those concepts are based on physical presence, which means no physical presence, no permanent establishment, or PE. And no PE, no tax on business profits. In other words, a market or users is not sufficient to say that a business has a permanent establishment. Digitalized economy presents tax systems and tax administrations with new and difficult issues. Industry participants operate on a worldwide basis and in some cases are extremely profitable. They are able to penetrate markets with little or no physical presence at all in them. In some cases, that also applies to digital companies. This is identified as a serious, if not the biggest challenge in the area of international taxation posed by the digitalization of the economy. I'm sure that most of you have heard of base erosion and profit shifting, or BEPS. The OECD defines tax planning strategies used by multinationals that exploit gaps and mismatches in tax rules to avoid paying tax. The challenge that the digital economy brings has potentially broadened the opportunity for multinational enterprises to avoid tax by utilizing BEPS strategies. This situation is particularly detrimental to developing countries, including Indonesia, because we heavily rely on corporate income tax, meaning we suffer from BEPS disproportionately. In a OECD report, for example, BEPS practices cost Indonesia, countries all over the world, 100 to 240 billion US dollars in lost revenue annually, which is the equivalent to 4 to 10% of the global corporate revenue. In a different study, the IMF analysis has revealed that the world is collectively losing close to 600 billion US dollars in fiscal revenue every year. If you look at the number in developing countries alone, the UN estimates the fiscal revenue lost due to BEPS is around 100 billion US dollars, whereas the IMF doubles the number. All studies were conducted about 2 to 5 years ago. It will be interesting to figure out what the number will be, taking into account the progressive development in the digitalized era. Next slide. Now, there are at least 3 options to address the challenge posed by the digitalization of the economy. First, the so-called unified approach, the one that Mr. Andrew just explained. This is the proposal to address the issue of taxation of digital economy proposed by the OECD G20 inclusive framework on BEPS, or simply IF. So in this proposal, the businesses that will be in scope are automated digital services and consumer businesses, and certain industries will be carved out. The global revenue threshold will be used. This means a multinational enterprise will be in scope if its global revenue is more than the threshold. It has not been decided yet, but according to the recent proposal, the Secretariat proposes 750 million euros same threshold used for CDCR. If agreed, the new tax will apply to 700 to 1,000 giant multinational enterprises. A local or market revenue will also be applied to determine the presence of nexus in the market jurisdiction. The implementation instrument is multilateral. The tax base will be based on multinational enterprises group financial accounts, possibly adjusted with complex additional features such as segmentation, plus factor, and loss carry forward. The second option is unilateral measure. I'm quite sure that some or many of you have heard of digital services tax, DST. So DST is one of unilateral measure. There are several measures or applied by some jurisdictions beside DST as well, but in here I would like to just focus on DST because most of countries that have implemented unilateral measures digital services tax, such as the ones in France, UK, and Italy. So some reasons that led the birth of unilateral measures. First, it seems to be related to some political dissatisfaction and lack of global consensus around whether digitalized businesses or business in general are paying their fair share. Second, there's an urgent need for greater tax revenues throughout the world, especially in the light of the current pandemic, where many developing countries see the digitalizing potential source of tax revenue. A view that is also shared by many developing countries. Last option here is treaty modification. Has established a committee to work independently to propose a new article 12B on digital services in the UN model tax convention that gives special attention to the interests of developing countries. It regulates allocation of taxing rights in respect of automated digital services. Next slide, please. While I mentioned that there are three options to address the tax challenges posed by digitalization of the economy, the word options might be a simplification because all three are actually not easy options. So let's look at one by one. For unified approach, for example, many developing countries criticize the unified approach as too complex, too complicated. For example, Pillar 1 proposal establishes a global corporate tax base to be shared among countries, rather than subjecting to separate country corporate tax bases. This is a huge structural change, and it may not be easy. Second issue is related to question of whether the global consensus is achievable. Many countries are actually optimistic. Some others are quite pessimistic. This is particularly true when they think that they may receive additional tax revenue as they expected. With regard to dispute prevention and resolution, there is a chance to use a panel of agreement with multinational enterprises on base and allocation and mandatory binding arbitration for amount A. This is something new for many countries, including Indonesia. As for treaty modification, treaty will have to be changed to accommodate new taxing rights by source or market jurisdiction. As we all know, there are only limited tax treaty networks in the developing world, including in Indonesia. So the issue here is negotiation capacity. Do we have sufficient resources to negotiate or renegotiate tax treaties? Most importantly, are partners willing to modify or giving up their taxing rights? Next slide. I took this slide from KPMG's taxation of the digitalized economy development summary, updated on December 22 last year. It shows the proliferation of unilateral measures proposed by countries, be DSTs, equalization levies, advertising taxes, etc. As you can see, Indonesia is among countries that have enacted legislations. However, we need to be careful to interpret this, because in Indonesia case, enacted doesn't mean in effect, depending on the existence of the implementing regulations. Yeah, I'll just go to the next slide. Now, in the current environment, short-term revenue needs will tend to dominate their priorities due to the need to fund the pandemic. But implementing countries may need to be aware of countervailing pressure from other countries, not only on the action of asserting discrimination against its enemies. We can see in the media done by the United States, for example, but also from other actions to limit measures expanding market taxing rights to categories of digital, for example. So this is something that the implementing jurisdictions need to think about. I think this is going to be my last slide before the thank you slide. So please bear with me. Yeah. So the $1 million question here is, what is the best solution? What is the ideal solution among the three, right? So some consider to modify the treaties to enable prompt authorization by treaty, or how to get greater taxation. Some other countries consider unilateral adoption of instruments that will add revenue, including digital services tax. I think unified approach seems to be promising and is ideal, especially if some complexity can be reduced. Also, as suggested by many experts, if the unified approach can manage to recover the fairness in the design, I think that will be my last slide. Yeah. My presentation, and I think I'm almost running out of time. So, a disclaimer though, everything I said here is of my perspective, not of the DGT. And back to you, Pa Wan Juli. Thank you.
slide select to some and mention about there is a question and there is a mark on
Sorry, Pak Wanjuli, I cannot hear you. I'm not sure if it's only
Indonesia. So, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, but it's not that clear, Pak.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Unilateral measure and treaty modification. And then Pak Anodo Purba mentioned about the issues associated with each approach. And there is
I'm sorry, maybe Mr. Purba will read in the chat and then you answer because maybe Mr. Wanjuli have a trouble in speaking. Please.
type in the chat or if you would like
I'm looking at the chat right now and I do not see any questions.
Can I ask you several questions? Then can I ask you some questions, Pak Anodo Purba?
Okay. Well, Bapak Ibu, now is question and answer.
Kok gini ya, dia jelek banget.
Bapak
Hello, good afternoon.
please, Bapak
Hello.
Muhammad.
Yes, my name is Mr. Noval. Hello.
Yes,
Do
Pak
you hear
Noval.
me?
Yes, Pak. Please.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr.
Yes.
Thank you very much for today's. Hello.
Yes, Pak Noval, please go on.
Please.
Wait. Okay. Do you hear me, Mister?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I want Halo.
Pak Wanjuli koneksinya sudah pakai yang sudah ya.
Hello.
Yes, Pak. Pak Novel, please continue.
Yes. My name is Noval from Stasia Surabaya, East Java. I want to ask about self-assessment system in the tax self-assessment system. What is the differences about self-assessment system from OECD principle in Indonesia and another states, maybe Australia, Malaysia. What is difference about self-assessment system used to OECD principle? Because you know, now I take dissertation about tax. Thank you very much.
Can I answer the question directly, Pak Wanjuli? Or
Yes, Pak, please.
okay, yeah. Thank you for the question, Pak Noval. So your question is about self-assessment criteria differences between countries, right? So I will try to understand what you are meaning here. And looking at our topic today is about the taxation of the digitalization of the economy. So I'll link the question to the topic. So in my opinion, Pak, self-assessment still applies to the taxation of the digitalization of the economy in a way that tax administrations set the criteria, right? So the government set the criteria and we set the system ready, and then the businesses that met the criteria, right, to be, for example, for VAT, PPN, Pak. Yeah, that's a good example, I think. Yeah, the implementing regulations are ready. PMK, the Minister of Finance Regulation number 48, and the Director General Regulation number 7 and number 12. We said that already. Yeah, the criteria, what criteria that a business platform has to satisfy in order to be appointed as the VAT collectors, right? And then the business players will register themselves. Yeah. So the self-assessment system still applies, even though the government has to facilitate, yeah, all these procedures, yeah, the regulations and the system. And even though in some cases we might need to be proactive, actively contact the potential businesses, yeah, that are considered met the criteria. But still, self-assessment applies. So the businesses are the one who decide that they are the taxpayers for this new tax. Yeah. Even though, let's say, if we apply the new tax on income tax or electronic transaction tax later on, yeah, I think self-assessment system will still apply, but the government will facilitate. Yeah, in particular the two elements, the regulations and the systems. Yeah, I think that also applies in all, not all, in most of countries around the world, more or less in general. Yeah. So that will be my response to your question, Noval.
I have to apologize first that because of the time limit that we have, I have to conclude the
Yes, Haris.
the second session. I webinar session. Thank you very much for your session attention. Thank you. Very
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please give virtual applause to Bapak Arnaldo Purba. Well, the committee has already given the link for the quiz to get the souvenir. So please, ladies and gentlemen, fill in the link in the chat room. The committee, Ibu Hayuni, please for the video.
Jadi pesan Barantar adalah layanan dari Gramedia untuk memudahkanmu belanja di Gramedia dengan cepat, tepat, dan hemat. Caranya sangat mudah, Grameds. Pertama, buka tautan link /Gramedia di browser smartphone-mu. Atau kunjungi Instagram Gramedia Books atau Gramedia Promo dan klik link di bio-nya. Kemudian, pilih Gramedia terdekat sesuai dengan lokasi atau daerahmu. Setelah itu, kamu akan terhubung dengan customer service Gramedia yang telah dipilih, lalu mereka siap melayani semua kebutuhan kamu. Pesan semua yang kamu butuhkan, karyawan Gramedia akan mempersiapkan pesananmu dengan tepat. Ikuti arahan yang diberikan oleh customer service Gramedia. Setelah itu, lakukan pembayaran dan pastikan kamu memanfaatkan promo yang sedang berlangsung di Gramedia, agar lebih hemat. Tunggu di rumah, pesananmu akan diantar dengan cepat. Gimana Gramet? Sudah paham kan dengan layanan pesan bayar antar?
Well, now we come to the last session, the third session. In order to the committee will do the session in bilingual. It means also in bahasa. In this third session, we will have Bapak Bawono Kristianji, SAMA, Chief of Surabaya Tax Center and Chief of Ubaya Tax Screening of Polytechnic Ubaya. Bapak Nobertus Purnomo Rastu, time is yours.
Okay. Good afternoon, my friends, my brother, my sister, my family. So I'm apologize because the network is not very well. There's many disruption about the network. Last but not least, I will promote the best friend, Mr. Bawono Aji. No, he is an expert people in research, not only in Indonesia, but in the world. Yeah. His partner in training and tax research in DDTC. Expert in public finance, tax policy, and transfer pricing. He always taken course in Harvard University. The university is the famous in the world. And 5 years ago, is to be a winner as the best thesis in Europe. Yeah. And now, Mr. Bawono, in front of you, please give fully attention. And in this session, especially in this session, we will in bilingual because the participant come from many kind, from student, from the dean, from the business. So to make effective, Mr. Aji will in bilingual language. So time is yours, Mr. Aji, and give the participant a track to you. Please applause to Mr. Aji, the most people in the resort in the world and Indonesia.
Yeah.
Time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Pur. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be here to share my views about the international digital economy taxation. Well, since that we all have the problem on the digitalization, especially during this seminar, we have network problems. The committee already asked me to share my views in Bahasa Indonesia to ensure the acceptance of the topics and also the issue on the digital economic taxation. So allow me to present my presentation in Bahasa. And first of all, I would like to also send my warm regards to of course, Prof. John Tagaul, and also Pak Andrew Arba, Pak Arnaldo Purba, Pak Purnomo as host of this beautiful seminar today, and also all the participants. So can I share my PowerPoint now, Pak? Can I start now?
Yes, okay, time is yours.
Ya, oke. Sudah lihat ya Pak ya? Sudah bisa ditinjau Pak?
Ya, bagus sekali, bagus.
Ya, oke. Bapak Ibu sekalian, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang dan salam sejahtera bagi kita semua.
Waalaikumsalam.
Terima kasih atas kesempatannya. Jadi ini suatu seminar yang sangat baik karena juga tadi kita sudah mendapatkan pencerahan dari Prof. John, dari Mr. Andrew terkait dengan bagaimana peran OECD dalam mengatasi persoalan di digital taxation, dan juga tadi ada Bang Aldo, salah satu kolega juga dari DJP, mengenai fokus kepada BEPS dan digital economy. Saya juga akan mengambil perspektif atau area yang sama, jadi dalam sesi kali ini, sesi terakhir ini saya tidak akan menyampaikan tentang indirect tax misalkan seperti itu, tapi lebih kepada bagaimana direct tax khususnya tentang pajak penghasilan. Dan ini saya langsung direct juga karena ini sesuatu yang mungkin sedang dibahas di mana-mana mengenai solusi apa yang terbaik ketika kita bicara tentang persoalan memajaki digital ekonomi khususnya untuk yang cross border yang sifatnya dari direct tax seperti itu. Izinkan saya untuk melihat dari timeline dahulu. Jadi kalau kita melihat dari timeline-nya ini mungkin karena tadi saya juga diinfokan kemarin diinfokan oleh Pak Pur bahwa tidak semuanya juga mungkin melihat persoalan digital ekonomi ini sudah di ujungnya saja atau mungkin di tengah-tengahnya atau hanya dengar-dengar isunya saja. Jadi kalau tadi kita menyimak paparan dari Prof. John, terus kemudian dari Pak Andrew, memang ada persoalan yang serius ketika kita bicara tentang PPH, terutama untuk yang bagaimana perusahaan-perusahaan digital yang bisa memperoleh penghasilan di negara lain gitu ya, tanpa memiliki kehadiran secara fisik. Nah, pada tahun 2015 waktu itu OECD sudah merilis gitu ya salah satu action, jadi action 1 dalam proyek BEPS-nya terkait dengan digital ekonomi. Walaupun kita tahu bahwa di action 1 tersebut mungkin belum ada solusi yang clear, belum ada peta jalan yang jelas, tapi hanya diberikan suatu tenggat waktu bahwa 5 tahun lagi kita akan memiliki suatu solusi seperti itu ya. Nah, tapi ketika report itu dirilis, kita tahu juga di saat yang bersamaan mulai banyak negara yang juga melakukan aksi unilateral. Aksi unilateral ini apa sih? Sesuatu yang kebijakan domestik yang tidak ibaratnya tidak melihat atau tidak mengconsider aspek-aspek bagaimana implikasinya dengan negara lain secara bilateral maupun dari konteksnya secara globalnya solusinya seperti apa. Jadi hanya melihat inward lookingnya saja. Jadi kita waktu itu sudah melihat misalkan di India, sampai di US waktu itu juga ada dari US Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, ada yang namanya Base Erosion Anti-Tax Abuse, jadi dan juga GILTI ini Global Intangible Low Income Tax gitu ya. Jadi di situ lebih kepada bagaimana caranya ada suatu minimum pemajakan yang akan apa ya mencegah yang namanya base erosion tersebut. Jadi waktu itu US juga sudah membuatnya. Nah, OECD waktu itu pada 2018 juga kemudian membuat interim report, jadi sementara gitu ya. Lagi-lagi di interim report ini belum ada suatu konklusi jelas, tapi baru ada beberapa solusi-solusi atau beberapa menu yang sudah ditawarkan. Kita tahu juga ada masalah mengenai misalkan bagaimana pemecahan melalui withholding tax, melalui bagaimana tentang seperti di India, equalization levy gitu ya, dan sebagainya. Lalu berlanjut lagi nih, waktu itu kalau tadi dari OECD, PBB kemudian mengeluarkan model baru yang namanya PBB artikel 12A gitu ya. Waktu itu sebenarnya lebih ke technical service fees gitu ya. Jadi bagaimana ada suatu withholding tax untuk yang dikategorikan sebagai technical service fee. Yang waktu itu dianggap ketika Anda misalkan ada pembayaran yang secara terus-menerus misalkan ya dari sisi advertising digital, itu waktu itu diinginkannya masuknya dalam kategori 12A tersebut. Lalu juga kita tahu ada US gitu ya, waktu itu ada kasus Supreme Court yang yang sangat terkenal namanya Wayfair case gitu ya. Jadi sebenarnya bukan dalam kerangka income tax tapi lebih kepada sales tax karena di sana sistemnya federal kita tahu. Dan juga yang paling penting adalah ketika mereka mengubah prinsip bagaimana hak pemajakan antar state gitu ya, antar negara bagian itu dari kehadiran secara fisik menjadi kehadiran secara digital atau kehadiran ekonomi secara signifikan. Itu konsepnya seperti itu. Lalu kemudian EU sudah mulai pasang untuk yang namanya digital service tax gitu ya. Nah ini berlanjut terus. Kemudian kita tahu di EU ini juga banyak negara yang sangat mazhabnya, saya bisa bilang bahwa lebih kepada solusinya nanti di digital service tax saja. Atau kalau di Indonesia ini bisa mungkin ada padanannya adalah pajak transaksi elektronik. Jadi ketika ada setiap kali ada pembayaran ke luar negeri atas misalkan automatic digital services gitu ya, nanti akan dikenakan seperti final tax atau turnover tax seperti itu. Jadi itulah yang dipropos oleh kebanyakan di negara EU member states gitu ya. Jadi kita tahu ada Prancis, ada Spain, ada Italia dan sebagainya yang berusaha ke sana. Nah, ini juga akhirnya masalah meranah politik juga ya. Waktu itu kita tahu ada berita tentang US Trade Representative berusaha untuk ibaratnya menggagalkan quote-unquote adanya gerakan digital services tax seperti itu. Jadi waktu itu Indonesia juga salah satu yang tahun lalu gitu ya masuk dalam radarnya US gitu ya. Karena kita tahu dalam Perpu nomor 1 di situ juga sudah ada klausul ketika ini kan kalau ngomonginnya tentang PPN, terus habis itu ketika ngomongin PPh-nya kita tahu ada konsep significant economic presence di PPh di Perpu nomor 1. Terus kemudian kalau ini nantinya tidak dilakukan gitu ya, tidak dilakukan dengan negara yang punya P3B, bisa jadi ini masuk ke arena yang pajak transaksi elektronik seperti itu. Nah, kalau kita rumuskan atau kita bisa pelajari dari timeline yang sebenarnya cukup kompleks gitu ya. Tadi juga Andrew sudah menyebutkan bagaimana pembahasan misalkan dari konteks OECD saja, pembahasan, konsultasi dan sebagainya itu juga berlarut-larut juga seperti itu ya. Kita bisa simpulkan apakah pemajakan atas digital gitu ya, terutama dalam konteks direct tax-nya ini konvergensi atau divergensi gitu ya. Jadi ibaratnya menuju ke titik yang sama atau tidak. Kalau kita melihat ini sebenarnya di satu sisi kita ada suatu sinyal positif ya, ada konvergensi dalam konteks BEPS Inclusive Framework, dalam konteks OECD Blueprint itu kemudian menuju ke satu titik yang sama. Tapi di sisi lain kita juga tidak bisa menutup mata adanya praktik-praktik unilateral dan juga usulan-usulan yang bisa dianggap sebagai kompetitor, misalnya dari PBB seperti itu ya. Jadi bisa saja mengarah kepada divergence juga seperti itu di kemudian hari. Lalu berikutnya, kalau kita lihat juga kita bisa bedakan nih ada yang kebijakannya unilateral, jadi kebijakan sepihak domestic tax gitu ya, atau kebijakan yang nanti bersifat bilateral, tadi juga Pak Aldo sudah menyebutkan hal tersebut, jadi ada unilateral, bilateral, dan multilateral, yang sebenarnya nantinya masuk dalam konteks P3B gitu ya, karena P3B atau tax treaty ini kan sebenarnya salah satu cara untuk bagaimana mengatasi pajak berganda atau juga non double taxation seperti itu ya. Nah, yang terakhir adalah multilateral yang digagas oleh OECD atau jadi solusi secara global. Nah, kita lihat juga solusinya ternyata beda-beda. Ada yang melihat dari kacamata ya simplicity aja lah. Jadi dipajaki tadi ya turnover tax misalkan digital services tax, atau juga yang sangat kompleks. Nah, nanti setelah ini saya akan menyampaikan beberapa isinya seperti itu. Ini adalah timelinenya, mudah-mudahan kita dari sini bisa mengetahui bahwa ini bukan sesuatu yang mudah, tapi ini juga akan mereformasi sistem pajak internasional. Kenapa saya bilang seperti itu? Karena kita tahu bahwa sistem pajak internasional kita saat ini masih bergantung kehadiran fisik ya sebagai hak pemajakan. Jadi kalau tadi sudah disebutkan tentang permanent establishment, contohnya yang bergantung sebagai kehadiran fisik, dan juga bagaimana prinsip transfer pricing. Transfer pricing kita tahu adanya alokasi laba berdasarkan fungsi aset resiko gitu ya, yang secara konvensional seperti itu. Tapi bagaimana kalau ada perusahaan-perusahaan yang bisa memperoleh data, dia memiliki aset yang lebih besar, seperti itu ya, dan dia memungkinkan dia mendapatkan laba dari suatu tempat tanpa dia juga harus memiliki suatu fungsi, misalkan membuka toko, reseller dan sebagainya. Ini yang akan merombak sistem pajak internasional seperti itu. Nah, inilah yang kalau kita flashback gitu ya, apa sih sebenarnya masalah dan juga solusinya. Nah, ini kan sebenarnya ada 4 masalah kalau dalam pajak internasional gitu ya. Jadi kompetisi pajak, jadi bagaimana setiap negara itu terus berlomba-lomba untuk dapat bagaimana attract investasi, attract sumber daya dan sebagainya seperti itu. Jadi melalui instrumen-instrumen pajak. Ini tetap aja berlanjut hingga sekarang. Terus juga bagaimana peluang adanya profit shifting, base erosion itu tetap ada gitu ya. Dan juga bagaimana dari sisi developing countries kita tahu bahwa mereka sangat tergantung sama komposisinya kebanyakan dari PPh badan gitu ya. Dan juga ternyata jenis-jenis pajak lainnya juga tidak terlalu mengembirakan. Nah, ini adalah problem sendiri juga. Dan yang terakhir adalah bagaimana political economy taxing rights. Jadi hak pemajakannya bagaimana. Kita tahu nih contoh ini adalah sesuatu yang klasik. Kita tahu bahwa seringkali disederhanakan bahwa ketika kita bicara tentang model P3B ala OECD dan model P3B ala PBB atau UN, itu punya mazhab atau orientasi yang berbeda. Yang satu hak pemajakannya lebih diberikan kepada negara sumber, yang satu kepada negara jurisdiksi atau residen ya seperti itu. Nah, inilah juga akhirnya kemudian masuk dalam arena debat digital tax seperti itu. Jadi kalau kita cuma bicara tentang masalah digital, sebenarnya mungkin solusinya tidak akan sekompleks sekarang. Tapi karena persoalan-persoalan di belakang masalah-masalah digital ekonomi tersebut, akhirnya solusinya nih kok bisa sampai senjelimet itu, sekompleks itu gitu ya. Kalau tadi kita misalkan melihat bagaimana OECD Blueprints itu terdiri atas amount A, amount B, ada pilar 1, pilar 2 gitu ya. Yang notabene itu kemudian misalkan ya merombak bagaimana nexus atau keterkaitan untuk mendapatkan atau indikator suatu untuk mendapatkan hak pemajakan. Atau juga bagaimana membagi laba dari perusahaan-perusahaan yang bergerak di automatic digital services yang nantinya misalkan berdasarkan formula tertentu, nanti lebih kepada market jurisdiction dan sebagainya. Terus kemudian ada pilar 2 juga, yang tadi ada minimum tax ya. Jadi ada income inclusion rule, atau misalkan bagaimana mencegah pembayaran atau deductible expense gitu ya, ketika ada pembayaran ke luar negeri, ke negara-negara yang sifatnya tarif pajak efektifnya di bawah misalnya nanti yang di-set secara global. Nah ini kan sebenarnya bukan masalah digital. Jadi makanya ketika kita bicara tentang multilateralism yang diusung oleh OECD, di situ juga loh kok kita nggak lagi bicara tentang automatic digital services ya, tapi juga misalkan consumer business seperti itu ya. Jadi yang di area-area tersebut. Kenapa bisa melebar seperti itu? Karena memang ketika kita bicara tentang debat digitalisasi, ternyata juga ada faktor-faktor lain di belakang itu. Masalah kompetisi pajak, peluang adanya BEPS, dan juga masalah political ekonomi macam-macam. Nah, dari konteks bilateralism, UN model artikel 12B kemudian juga diluncurkan gitu ya tahun lalu. Ini sebenarnya nantinya ada ini khusus untuk yang hanya digital services saja. Jadi yang minim human intervention gitu ya. Jadi untuk jasa-jasa yang minim human intervention. Jadi ibaratnya ketika ada digital services yang sifatnya otomatis, beriklan dan sebagainya yang terus-menerus tanpa adanya keterkaitan manusia gitu ya. Ini masuk dalam skupnya UN model artikel 12B setelah nanti ya tapi nanti ada evaluasinya juga ya, sebelumnya tidak masuk di artikel 12A misalkan seperti itu. Ini melalui withholding tax mechanism yang sebenarnya nantinya ada tarif yang nanti akan disepakati oleh satu negara dengan negara lain atau treaty partnersnya seperti itu, contracting states lah. Nah, ini memang lebih condong kepada negara sumber atau juga market jurisdiction seperti itu kalau dalam konteks bilateralism. Yang terakhir adalah unilateral action yang sebenarnya berdiri di atas bagaimana kehadiran ekonomi secara signifikan dan akhirnya menggunakan digital services tax sebagai instrumen untuk memajaki raksasa-raksasa digital. Semisal saya beriklan di Google gitu ya, misalkan seperti itu. akhirnya saya harus membayar iklan ke Google berdasarkan klik, misalkan seperti Google AdSense seperti itu. Jadi atas pembayaran yang saya bayarkan, misalkan pada Google, bukan Google di Indonesia, tapi misalkan di Google di Singapura atau misalkan di mana gitu ya, itu nanti akan dikenakan pajak final atas misalkan berapa persen gitu ya. Misalkan kalau di EU ini kan rata-rata 3%, atau di India itu mengacunya ke 6% seperti itu ya. Lalu juga unilateralism itu juga terlihat dari bagaimana US itu mengenakan minimum tax gitu ya. Jadi mereka memodifikasi ketentuan CFC-nya, contohnya seperti itu ya. Jadi yang tadi saya jelaskan mengenai bid and guilty seperti itu. Yang pasti unilateralism ini inward looking. Jadi hanya saya tidak peduli dengan negara lain ngapain, saya tidak peduli apa dampaknya terhadap negara lain, yang penting adalah perspektifnya nasional. Nah, akhirnya inilah yang kita perlu untuk review, mana sebenarnya solusi yang paling terbaik gitu ya. Mungkin jawabannya tidak yang terbaik, tapi kita mungkin akan lihat secara satu persatu. Pertama dari isu tentang tax sovereignty gitu ya. Kalau kita melihat isu tentang kedaulatan pajak, sering ya kita mendengar jargon-jargon ini, kedaulatan pajak, yang sebenarnya kalau kita melihat isu ini sebenarnya berangkat dari adanya preferensi nasional, preferensi fiskal suatu negara. Jadi bagaimana perspektif penerimaannya. Dan tadi juga ada pertanyaan-pertanyaan mengenai pandemi COVID ini, gimana nanti penerimaannya. Nah, mungkin ini semakin relevan. Terus juga bagaimana tentang sosial ekonomik perspektifnya, berapa banyak. Ya, Pak. Oke. Berapa banyak misalkan masyarakat saya yang tergantung oleh misalkan digital apps tersebut untuk mencari nafkah. Contohnya seperti itu. Atau bagaimana implikasi Google Maps gitu atau yang lain gitu ya terhadap kesejahteraan publik saya gitu. Jadi inilah sesuatu yang juga harus dipertimbangkan, dan juga bagaimana redistributif policy-nya. Di sisi lain kita mengenal kalau teman-teman di sini yang mungkin berasal dari akademisi gitu ya. Jadi kita mengenal konsep. Halo, Pak Pur.
Yes.
Ya.
Oke.
Gimana,
ya, Mr. Raji?
Gimana, lanjut ya, Pak? Oh,
lanjut.
Okay.
Sedikit
okay.
lagi. Sedikit lagi.
Jadi kita mengenal juga ada namanya konsep international equity yang biasanya di situ sebenarnya diperkenalkan oleh Peggy Musgrave gitu ya waktu dengan suaminya. Jadi kita tahu ada definition of tax base-nya, bagaimana eliminasi double tax-nya, nexus-nya, bagaimana profit allocation dan sebagainya. Umumnya kalau kita bicara international equity pada zaman dahulu ini biasanya tercermin dalam tax treaty seperti itu. Tapi sekarang kan sebenarnya udah semakin kompleks itu ya. Apakah mungkin ya solusi secara bilateral seperti itu. Nah, ini saya akan masuk dalam isu-isunya gitu ya. Benar nggak sih sebenarnya pertama kalau kita bilang bahwa kalau kita mau melindungi atau menjamin kedaulatan pajak ya kita harusnya ngambilnya unilateral action. Apakah betul seperti itu? Kenyataannya adalah begini. Kenyataannya adalah kita perlu mempertimbangkan adanya spillover effect atau adanya efek limpahan. Jadi spillover ini kan sebenarnya secara tidak langsung kebijakan suatu negara itu bisa berakibat pada kebijakan negara lain yang akhirnya bisa jadi sebenarnya target yang sebenarnya kita tujuan dari instrumen pajak yang kita pergunakan, misalkan penurunan tarif nih, menurunkan tarif dari 25 menjadi 15%, contohnya seperti itu. Bisa menarik investasi, tapi kalau semisal ada dampak lain, kalau semisal negara lain mengikuti juga, misalkan seperti itu. Jadi akhirnya kita nggak bisa membuat suatu kebijakan dalam ruang yang terisolasi seperti itu ya. Jadi ada spillover-nya. Jadi argumen bahwa unilateral action itu bisa menjamin kedaulatan pajak itu juga tidak sepenuhnya benar. Terus kemudian kalau bisa dibilang apakah sebenarnya justru yang paling benar adalah multilateralism gitu ya. Jadi ketika kita bicara bahwa setidaknya kalau kita kooperasi bekerja sama gitu dengan negara lain, cooperate gitu ya, itu paling tidak menjamin kedaulatan pajak setiap negara at least at the minimum level at equal level seperti itu ya. Jadi sama semua dapatnya. Jadi inilah yang sebenarnya perlu untuk kita lihat. Jadi kalau kita lihat lagi, solusi-solusi yang bersifat unilateral sebenarnya tidak cocok untuk persoalan-persoalan yang bersifat global seperti itu ya. Jadi bisa jadi kita berlindung di balik fake tax sovereignty, saya bilang seperti itu. Nah, mungkin saya akan cepat saja karena waktunya nggak banyak. Juga ini ada technical aspek, saya mungkin tidak terlalu banyak ya. Waktu saya tinggal berapa, Pak Pur?
Waktunya kayaknya sudah hampir habis, Pak.
Oke, saya mungkin nggak masuk ke technical aspek karena saya yakin ini udah sore hari dan mungkin juga tidak terlalu nyaman gitu dengan sesuatu yang berat. Saya mungkin akan masuk ke masalah yang sifatnya atau konklusi aja lah Pak ya. Saya ini sebenarnya saya memberikan suatu empat review gitu ya, dari tax sovereignty issues, dari technical aspects, dari political aspect, economic impact. Nah, ini yang saya review semua dan ini mungkin konklusi yang saya bisa sampaikan pada seminar sore hari ini, bahwa sebenarnya saya percaya bahwa ketika kita bicara tentang digital tax, ini adalah ujian terbesar dari bagaimana global tax governance kita ke depan. Global tax governance itu apa sih? Jadi kita bicara tentang bagaimana suatu tata kelola atau perumusan kebijakan secara internasional itu dibentuk, siapa aktornya, siapa leadernya, dan nilai-nilai apa yang dipergunakan, seideal mana, seadil apa, seperti itu. Jadi ini adalah ujian terberat karena menurut saya di sini pun juga OECD menurut saya tidak, mungkin OECD leading di sini ya, tapi juga di sisi lain kita juga sering mendengar bahwa ada tanggapan-tanggapan bahwa tidak sepenuhnya percaya sama OECD. Kenapa tidak mencoba solusi yang ditawarkan oleh PBB dan sebagainya. Ini yang kita perlu untuk lihat bersama. Lalu kemudian unilateral dan bilateral action menurut saya juga rasional. Rasional gini ya, dari perspektif terutama penerimaan. Jadi kalau kita bicara tentang unilateral action, misalkan pajak transaksi elektronik, itu benar bahwa secara penerimaan ini akan memberikan keuntungan. Tapi pertanyaannya, apakah benar tax burden tersebut kemudian diabsorb oleh perusahaan atau raksasa-raksasa digital, atau yang sebenarnya yang dirugikan nanti adalah consumer welfare-nya seperti itu ya, dan juga akan mengarah kepada double tax. Nah makanya jadi rasional in some way gitu ya, jadi dalam derajat tertentu, tapi ini nggak efisien gitu ya solusinya. Nah, di sisi lain, multilateral framework ini sebenarnya menurut saya adalah first best solution, jadi yang paling baik gitu ya. Cuman ini kan kita bicara kerangkanya, paling baik adalah multilateralism gitu ya. Tapi isunya ketika kita bicara tentang blueprint OECD, ada masalah political dan juga technical aspects. Technical aspects-nya juga menurut saya tidak mudah di dapat solusinya, apalagi politikalnya seperti itu. Nah, tapi juga di sisi lain ini saya ingin mengingatkan bahwa kita juga ada constraint yang satu lagi, bahwa ada masalah time frame. Time frame-nya adalah bahwa kalau kita nggak bergerak secara cepat, ini kita bicara tentang ekonomi digital yang tahun ini mungkin yang terkenal TikTok, tahun depan mungkin beda lagi seperti itu ya. Jadi ini kita bicara time frame juga, bagaimana solusi ini harus diambil secara cepat, mau pilih yang mana. Dan juga ada revenue pressure gitu ya, dengan ada pandemi COVID-19 sebenarnya upaya-upaya untuk meningkatkan potensi penerimaan pajak dari basis yang baru ini menurut saya semakin relevan dan semakin meningkat. Nggak cuma di Indonesia, tapi juga di banyak negara lain. Jadi ini yang mungkin saya nggak dapat solusi atau tidak memberikan suatu solusi yang clear terkait dengan masalah ini unilateral, bilateral, or multilateral, tapi ini semua saya coba untuk lihat atau kupas plus minusnya. Seperti itu mungkin yang bisa saya sampaikan, Pak Pur. Terima kasih banyak.
Baik, ya. Terima kasih Mas Aji. Kata orang bahwa kecepatan berbicara mencerminkan penguasaan materi. Nah, Mas Aji ini kalau berbicara 1 menit itu bisa lebih 2 atau 3 kali dari yang lain. Itu berarti penguasaan materinya 2 atau 3 kali lebih dari yang lain, gitu ya. Mas Aji, sebetulnya ada banyak pertanyaan, cuman saya akan mewakili pertanyaan dari beberapa peserta yang ikut. Dalam era pemajakan digital, kira-kira peluang apa yang bisa ditangkap oleh para konsultan pajak? Nah, ya, satu. Yang kedua, kira-kira apa yang harus diwaspadai oleh para pengusaha? Nah, ini mewakili pengusaha. Dan yang ketiga, bagaimana para mahasiswa itu mempersiapkan diri untuk mengantisipasi dan menguasai masalah digital tax. Nah, ini merangkum dari para peserta ini, 3 pihak. Gitu, Mas Haji. Demikian, Pak Haji, tolong singkat, jelas, padat, dan mengena, gitu ya.
Iya, Pak, terima kasih, Pak. Walaupun sebenarnya pertanyaan kurang ini ya dengan apa yang saya sampaikan, tapi saya akan coba jawab. Karena kalau kita bicara tentang digitalisasi, kayaknya kita nggak bisa tutup mata bahwa ini semua mengubah sendi-sendi atau aspek-aspek kehidupan kita. Jadi kalau dari sisi pertama dari konsultan ya, Pak ya.
Yeah.
Oke, pertama menurut saya ketika kita ini mungkin saya jelaskan dulu landscape-nya pajak kita ke depan. Bahwa seperti ya di kemudian hari Indonesia ini, dan kalau kita lihat peta jalannya dari strategi DJP misalkan ya 2020 sampai 2024, kita tahu bahwa ada upaya-upaya semakin membuat administrasi pajak itu terintegrasi dan juga didigitalisasikan seperti itu ya. Jadi sekarang kita, kalau dulu mungkin kita hanya mengenal misalkan e-faktur ya Pak ya, gitu ya. Tapi sekarang kita segala macam tuh depannya i semua, dan juga nanti akan ada cortex misalkan seperti itu. Nah, ibaratnya apa yang penting bagi konsultan? Menurut saya begini Pak, nggak usah takut bahwa. Jadi kan banyak juga atau ada kekhawatiran dari teman-teman seringkali bahwa wah nanti kalau sistemnya serba otomatis, bagaimana nih peran konsultan pajak seperti itu ya? Kalau menurut saya tidak ada yang perlu dikhawatirkan karena ketika kita bicara tentang aspek pajak selalu ada yang namanya masalah interpretasi, selalu ada masalah yang sifatnya ini bukan hanya compliance ya, tapi juga bagaimana advisory dan sebagainya seperti itu. Memang di satu sisi kita harus menguasai teknologinya, terutama dari sisi administrasi pajak, tapi juga bagaimana kita tetap optimis seperti itu. Itu dari sisi konsultan pajak ya Pak ya. Kalau dari sisi bisnis, waduh. Kalau dari sisi bisnis, saya sebenarnya salah satu pihak yang terus mendorong adanya optimalisasi pemungutan pajak di ekosistem digital dalam negeri seperti itu ya. Jadi kalau Bapak Ibu yang memang berbisnis di misalkan melalui Facebook, melalui juga atau platform yang sudah marketplace gitu seperti itu di dalam negeri, menurut saya memang sudah saatnya kita semua membayar pajak dengan patuh seperti itu ya, karena di kemudian hari dan kalau kita melihat nih kok semakin timpang ya antara bisnis konvensional dengan bisnis yang berbasis digital. Jadi ini juga sesuatu yang harus kita antisipasi seperti itu. Dan yang terakhir bagi siapa Pak? Bagi mahasiswa ya Pak?
Wah, ya.
Bagi
mahasiswa dan dosen.
Oh, ada mahasiswa dan dosen. Ya menurut saya kurikulum gitu ya. Kurikulum itu juga menurut saya juga perlu untuk diselaraskan gitu ya. Begini Pak, saya punya teman sekarang lagi belajar di Tilburg gitu ya, University di Belanda. Itu dia belajar salah satu mata kuliahnya adalah Tax and Technology. Apa yang dipelajari? Yang dipelajari adalah sesi hari ini belajar tentang tax compliance, besok itu belajar tentang programming, besok itu tentang blockchain Pak. Jadi bagaimana nantinya integrasi antara keilmuan pajak dengan keilmuan atau teknologi itu menurut saya akan semakin besar. Itu mungkin yang bisa disampaikan Pak Pur. Terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Haji. Dan teman-teman yang tadi bertanya dengan tidak mengurangi rasa hormat, pertanyaannya memang sudah dicatat dan nanti akan mendapatkan souvenir dari DDTC gitu ya, jangan khawatir. Dan Mas Aji, banyak terima kasih sekali atas sharingnya dan atas penguasaan materinya gitu ya. Oke, terima kasih. Saya moderator sekaligus penggagas acara. Terima kasih dan saya kembalikan ke MC. Time is yours, Devi.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to Bapak Bawono Krista Aji for the interesting speech. Ibu Hai, please for the video. Now, we come to the end of the session. I would like to announce some information. First, the attendance list, daftar hadir. The link will be informed in the Zoom chat. Indira, please share the link in the group Zoom chat. Bapak Ibu, please find daftar hadir in the Zoom chat. The second, the winner of the quiz rewards for the question and answer session, surprise souvenir for participants will be informed in the slide. And the last information, the certificates of the participants will be given to them who already filled the attendance list, and the certificate will be emailed to you within 2 days. Please, the committee, Poppy, share your screen. Poppy, silakan. The winner of quiz, session 1. Anggia, Susana, and Vivin. Winner of question and answer session 1, Clarissa M. Agnansa. Winner of quiz session 2, Sebastian Prasetya Kevin Pujianto Desi Teresia. Winner of question and answer session 2, Muhammad Naufal Wulan Oktaviani. Winner of the best virtual background, Samuel Gunadi, Hari Lunardi, Ricky Riyadi. Please, all the winners contact Poppy and Indira at the mobile phone number on the slide. Congratulations for all the winners.
Yes, right. That's where I live. Simple space to set up all of my goals. From here, I'll start to change the world. By this sketch, I would start to modernize the world, or at least make my own hometown better. Green environments around me, cozy and on-time public ride, fair traffic to drive all around the city, with all those modern buildings and skyscrapers in front of your sight. What a wonderful scenery, right? Though before that, I gotta develop myself. Where do I start? First things first, I need a long-life trustworthy partner. A spouse, maybe. I know, it's not easy. Till I found one partner. Yes! Bang BTN! Making my life easier and helping me realize my dreams. With all its supporting products, facilities, and its digital banking solutions, helping me reaching out my dreams. How could it be? I did it all digitally. With the right partner and a great support, definitely maximizing my potential. And we'll keep going on and on. Woohoo! That's right. It made me feel Wait. It's not completed yet. What does all of these mean without my own home? I keep on trying till it's the right time to say, yuk cari rumah idaman kita dan bangun keluarga bahagia. Then, it's all just perfect. Thank you, Bank BTN. Bank BTN has been trusted to run 1 million houses government programs. By 2018, Bank BTN has more than 306 trillion rupiahs of total assets, with majority market share in KPR compared to other banks. Bank BTN has also been honored with some international and domestic awards. 100 Best Listed Companies 2018 by Majalah Investor, 2017 Vision Awards by League of American Communication Professionals, Asian Best Public Companies by Majalah Swa, Indonesia-Turkey Global Leaders Award 2018, Best of the Best Awards 2018 by Forbes Indonesia, Penghargaan Gratifikasi Hakordia 2018 by KPK, and Corporate Governance Conference and Award by Indonesian Institute of Corporate Directorship. Bank BTN has been spread out for over 900 branches all over the nation. Better yet, it has provided homes for more than 4 million families in Indonesia. Let's get engaged with the right partner like me, bro. Bank BTN, sahabat keluarga Indonesia.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before I wrap up the event, on behalf of the committee, I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Dr. John Hutagal, Mr. Andre Auerbach, Bapak Arnaldo Purba, Bapak Bawono Kristiaji, all moderators, participants from all over Indonesia, and also overseas participants. My gratitude also to John Robert Powers, Gramedia, IKPI, DDTC, Bank BTN, Tech Center of Polytechnic Ubaya for the support. Ladies and gentlemen, stay healthy and see you again in the next upcoming Polytechnic Ubaya event. Thank you.
Oke, terima kasih Ibu Devi dan para peserta. Salam kenal dari saya selaku event organizer dari Politeknik Ubaya. Ya, mohon maaf kalau ada kekurangan. Saya sebagai Ketua Forum Pajak Surabaya, Forum Tech Center Surabaya. Mohon maaf kalau ada kekurangan. Kita bisa berjumpa lagi di lain kesempatan. Terima kasih Pak Bawono, Pak Arnoldo, Pak Arnold, Mr. Andre, dan Pak John. Kita ketemu lagi, tetap sehat, jaga jarak, pakai masker, dan cuci tangan. Sampai jumpa. Salam dari Indonesia untuk Malaysia. Untuk Prancis. Terima kasih.
Untuk Timur Tengah juga, Kak.
Timur Timur, oke, untuk Timur Timur. Dari Sabang sampai Merauke, gitu ya.
DDTC merupakan institusi perpajakan yang berbasis riset dan ilmu pengetahuan, sekaligus merupakan unit dari berbagai kegiatan perpajakan yang mempunyai standar tinggi dan menjadi acuan utama di bidang perpajakan. Kami bukan sekedar konsultan pajak biasa. Kami memiliki misi-misi yang luar biasa yang terus kami kembangkan dan kami bangun bersama para profesional muda yang menyukai tantangan dan inovasi. Kami memberikan jasa perpajakan yang berkualitas dan komprehensif, yang melebihi ekspektasi klien kami. Kami berkontribusi dalam menginisiasi isu serta formulasi kebijakan pajak sebagai upaya menjamin adanya transformasi sistem pajak untuk mendukung sistem perpajakan lebih baik. Kami berbagi ilmu pengetahuan dengan menyediakan pendidikan pajak berkualitas terbaik sebagai sarana pembelajaran yang kondusif untuk memperbaiki kualitas SDM perpajakan di Indonesia. Kami berkomitmen mempromosikan literasi perpajakan dengan menghadirkan berita dan artikel perpajakan yang berkualitas dan dapat dipercaya untuk mengeliminasi asimetri informasi perpajakan. Kami menyediakan fasilitas penelusuran berbagai peraturan perpajakan dan putusan pengadilan pajak yang Anda butuhkan dengan fitur-fitur menarik untuk membantu memahami permasalahan perpajakan secara mendalam. Kami memfasilitasi pengetahuan pajak Anda melalui DDTC Library dengan koleksi lebih dari 2.500 buku dan jurnal internasional, pusat pengetahuan perpajakan yang terbuka untuk publik. Tanpa ikatan dinas, kami mengirim staf profesional untuk menempuh pendidikan magister di universitas-universitas terbaik di dunia dan menghadiri berbagai macam pelatihan, seminar, maupun kursus internasional. Para profesional kami terdiri atas berbagai disiplin ilmu dari berbagai universitas ternama dengan sertifikasi keahlian pajak, baik dari dalam maupun luar negeri. Managing partner kami, Darussalam, terlibat di dalam berbagai organisasi, aktif menjadi pembicara di event-event pajak maupun menulis artikel tentang perpajakan. Darussalam juga termasuk salah satu World's Leading Transfer Pricing Advisor di Indonesia pada 2018. Senior partner kami, Denny Septriadi, menjadi salah satu World Leading Transfer Pricing Advisor pada 2015 dan 2017. Denny Septriadi juga menjadi saksi ahli dalam arbitrase internasional di London terkait sengketa pajak. Partner kami, Bawono Kristiaji, memenangkan CFE Albert G. Riddle Medal pada 2015 atas tesisnya di Tilburg University, sebuah penghargaan bergengsi untuk tesis se-Eropa. Bawono Kristiaji juga kerap diundang menjadi pembicara dalam konferensi dan forum internasional. Senior manajer kami, Yusuf Wangko Ngantung, terpilih sebagai pemenang WTS Award pada 2014, sebuah penghargaan bergengsi di Vienna University of Economic and Business untuk tesis terbaik. Berdasarkan International Tax Review, kami berada di tier pertama sebagai konsultan pajak transfer pricing terkemuka di Indonesia. Sementara sebagai institusi pajak, kami berada di tier kedua. Kami aktif berbagi pemikiran dan pengetahuan melalui tulisan buku, majalah, dan jurnal. Tidak hanya di lingkup domestik, tetapi juga melalui buku, jurnal, dan publikasi internasional lainnya. Semua pencapaian kami tidak terlepas dari kepercayaan dan dukungan masyarakat pajak. Untuk itu, kami mengembangkan program CSR untuk turut membentuk masyarakat yang sadar pajak. Tidak hanya itu, kami juga menjalin kerjasama pendidikan dengan universitas dan sekolah tinggi di Indonesia. Sudah lebih dari 1 dekade, kami mewarnai perpajakan Indonesia dengan etos yang tidak hanya sekedar bekerja. Tetapi juga saling berbagi dan mengisi layaknya sebuah keluarga.
Jadi pesan berantar adalah layanan dari Gramedia untuk memudahkanmu belanja di Gramedia dengan cepat, tepat, dan hemat. Caranya sangat mudah, Grameds. Pertama, buka tautan link /Gramedia di browser smartphone-mu. Atau kunjungi Instagram Gramedia Books atau Gramedia Promo dan klik link di bio. Kemudian, pilih Gramedia terdekat sesuai dengan lokasi atau daerahmu. Setelah itu, kamu akan terhubung dengan customer service Gramedia. Lalu mereka siap melayani semua kebutuhan kamu. Pesan semua yang kamu butuhkan, karyawan Gramedia akan mempersiapkan pesananmu dengan tepat. Ikuti arahan yang diberikan oleh customer service Gramedia. Setelah itu, lakukan pembayaran dan pastikan kamu memanfaatkan promo yang sedang berlangsung di Gramedia agar lebih hemat. Tunggu di rumah, pesananmu akan diantar dengan cepat. Gimana Grameds? Sudah paham kan dengan layanan pesan berantar?
Yes, right. That's where I live. Simple space to set up all of my goals. From here, I'll start to change the world. By this sketch, I would start to modernize the world, or at least make my own hometown better. Green environments around me, cozy and on-time public ride, fair traffic to drive all around the city, with all those modern buildings and skyscrapers in front of your sight. What a wonderful scenery, right? Though before that, I gotta develop myself. Where do I start? First things first, I need a long life trustworthy partner. A spouse maybe. I know, it's not easy. Till I found one partner. Yes, Bang BTN. Making my life easier and helping me realize my dreams. With all its supporting products, facilities, and its digital banking solutions, helping me reaching out my dreams. How could it be? I did it all digitally. With the right partner and a great support, definitely maximizing my potential. And we'll keep going on and on. Woohoo! That's right. It made me feel Wait. It's not completed yet. What does all of these mean without my own home? I keep on trying till it's the right time to say, yuk cari rumah idaman kita dan bangun keluarga bahagia. Then, it's all just perfect. Thank you, Bank BTN. Bank BTN has been trusted to run 1 million houses government programs. By 2018, Bank BTN has more than 306 trillion rupiahs of total assets, with majority market share in KPR compared to other banks. Bank BTN has also been honored with some international and domestic awards. 100 Best Listed Companies 2018 by Majalah Investor, 2017 Vision Awards by League of American Communication Professionals, Asian Best Public Companies by Majalah SWA, Indonesia-Turkey Global Leaders Award 2018, Best of the Best Awards 2018 by Forbes Indonesia, Penghargaan Gratifikasi Hakordia 2018 by KPK, and Corporate Governance Conference and Award by Indonesian Institute of Corporate Directorship. Bank BTN has been spread out for over 900 branches all over the nation. Better yet, it has provided homes for more than 4 million families in Indonesia. Let's get engaged with the right partner like me, bro. Bank BTN, sahabat keluarga Indonesia.